Hi, welcome aboard Tug-A-Tie. I'm David and I'm on my 23-foot Ranger tug here off the south end of Lopez Island in McKay Harbor. Went lingcod fishing today and going halibut fishing tomorrow, and I was going to give you a little tour of the Salon and Galley modifications I've done to show you the ideas that I put together to make it more useful for a small boat like this, and to show my appreciation to everyone that has done other instructional videos over all these years that have helped me in my woodworking. Okay, in this video, what I'm going to do is first give you an overview of the design that I put into all of these things, and then the second part I'm going to look at the details for those of you that want to use the construction details for this. So first thing up that was most important was some galley additions here. And to me, what I thought about was what are those things that I use most often. So things like plates, coffee in the morning, essential. So I got a pot here. I got my French press over here. I got my bowls, soap, hand soap, dish soap, and a rack up here for everything. So all this was put together with the intention of what are those things that I used most often. So as you can see in this drawer, what I've done is built a drawer that pulls out, goes back in, uses the same hardware that came from the factory, just replaced that. So for the bottom, rather than do a drawer, wanted to make sure that I had access to the water pump and all the other things that are underneath. So I didn't put a drawer there. I just put a door on a hinge. And so there's a piano hinge that goes along the bottom there, all with teak on it. And so that just opens up as part of that. And so you can get access to everything underneath there. For the last two drawers, all I did is they're just the same drawers. What I've done is just modified the front of them. I took the front off and put a new front on. Did the same thing for this one. Just the same thing, just used all that. The other thing that you might have noticed is that I have a butane stove rather than what I think is a worthless alcohol stove. It takes forever to heat up coffee. So when I had that, what I really wanted to do is to have a place to store that, because I use it every day, a couple times a day probably. And so what I did is I built a shelf here in the cave. You can see that it's built up underneath here and stores the box, and then some propane, and also butane as part of that. And so that all fits in that little unused space right in there.
In the second part of this video, I will now go through some of the design and construction details for the modifications I made to this 23-foot Ranger tug. Here is the configuration my galley came in from the factory. First thing you need to do is to remove the stainless steel rail. To do that, you need to unbolt it from underneath by going in through the cabinet. It is best if you're skinny, or at least skinnier than me. I actually almost got stuck in the cabinet. If you have a kid around, this is a good project for them. When you unbolt the rail, you can reuse it on the teak shelves in the head, which is where I put it. Now with the rail removed, you can start laying out your project. The sides of the boat angle are about 7.5 degrees. Check that angle by cutting some test pieces and seeing if they match the side and provide a vertical right angle at the front of the legs. You'll also want to get some angle and distance measurements on the boxed-in area that leads to the brass porthole window. Next, look at how the fiberglass is raised above the area where your stove is set in. I measured 1/4 inch. The legs of your shelf will be on both the fiberglass and that wood. Finally, measure the diameter of your sink faucet so that you can cut a hole out to go around that area. Once you have your measurements, you can start creating some templates. As you can see in this mock-up, not only did I use scrap wood, but I also tried other configurations of what I would store in that area. I probably made about 4 or 5 mock-ups before finishing it. In this one, I have the legs and the bottom shelf cut, and I'm now custom fitting the top shelf in the test piece of wood. This shop photo shows you how I cut dados into the legs and how the horizontal brace at the top was put in. Always the most nerve-wracking part of woodworking for me is glue up and clamping. The woods I use are often random. For this project I used padauk and maple, and this early picture is before the padauk started to darken. Most people would likely choose teak to match the existing wood. I sealed all of this wood with a penetrating sealer called Ship and Shore. I wanted a good sealant because it was likely to get wet in its location. I came up with this idea of building a rail by making these tiny legs that wrapped around the top shelf and onto the leg. It is both functional and aesthetic. To secure the shelf, I took advantage of strategically screwing into the 1/4-inch paneling that came with the boat. The plate rack is right below the brass porthole light. There are lots of wires that run behind there, so before I screwed into it, I took the plastic ring off and checked the wiring to make sure I wasn't screwing into them. Your screw sizes should only be as long as needed and not stick out to cause a short in wiring. Here you can see that horizontal brace that supports the shelf above and is used to insert a screw into the paneling. I used other braces on the bottom that were easy to secure to both the shelf and the panel. The corner causes a different challenge. I decided to use wood because I was thinking I might add some other features like a knife rack. I also like this piece of wood as a feature. The easier approach to this project is to keep the stock corner in place, like this one on the other side. If you go with wood, you do have a template that can help with cutting the top part of your piece. However, in order to gain access to the channel behind, you will need to cut that stock piece into two, like I did with my wood corner. My corner is made of two pieces, with the top part easily removed. Making this piece is a challenge because you have multiple angles from the side and back. I cut many test pieces before final assembly. I hope the details of this assembly process helps you in designing your galley modifications. For the bottom, I decided to remove the doors. The doors are screwed into very flimsy wood paneling, which I found out when I ran into one when I had a fish on. I also didn't want to open doors in order to open a drawer. For the drawer, I used an 18-inch Bloom Blue Motion drawer slide. This is a bottom mount drawer. As with everything on this boat, nothing is square. On my boat, the shelf inside the cabinet is not square with the front of the cabinet. I found this out after I built the drawer and I did the initial installation. This is why you see all those wedges in there to make the drawer front square with the cabinet. Knowing this going in should allow you to build a more elegant approach. The bottom mount requires you to get it even with the opening. I also added a piece of wood at the back to secure the slides to. Another option is to build sidewalls in there and mount the slides that way. I wanted to have access to everything and chose the bottom mount approach. My drawer is 6 inches deep on the inside and it has a compartment on the left where I stash my snacks. I built a utensil tray that sits into that slot. For the bottom, I chose to put a door in rather than a drawer. I wanted to have access to the water pump and other things below that floor. I think a drawer can work because you can remove the drawer, so that is a matter of personal preference. The door is attached with a continuous stainless steel piano hinge. The hinge is attached to a teak rail that is secured with screws from inside the cabinet. If you look inside the cabinet, you will see the fiberglass for the cabinet screws into the front wood paneling. I removed those screws and screwed through to the teak. I also added a couple more screws for strength. Of course, the cabinet is not square with the floor, so you can either cut your teak at an angle or just know that there is a different gap at the aft of your boat. The shelf in the cave is fairly easy to secure. The top piece of the shelf is cut to fit up into that fiberglass groove where the seat is bolted through. You need to cut the rabbit fur out. Take the screws out of your seat, remove the hydraulic piston, and remove the seat. Clamp the wood into place and drill through the wood. You'll need longer machine screws when you reassemble. I also secured the shelf with a piece of 1/8 inch stainless steel that I put on the bottom of the bottom part of the shelf. The stainless extends past the shelf to get attached to where your feet are below the dinette. Screw up into the wood, but don't screw too far or you will have holes in the fiberglass near your feet. Don't ask me how I know that. Well, I hope this video gives you ideas for how to customize your boat. For us, the 23-foot boat is big enough for what we want to do, but making it more useful makes longer trips much more enjoyable. It is 15 minutes from our house to the boat launch and 45 minutes to this spot on Susha Island. We are blessed and lucky to be able to live here. If you visit here, please tread lightly. Thank you.